All right, folks, thank you for being here tonight. We're going to go through some introductions here. And I want to make sure that you notice, if you've been here for a while, there is a familiar face back at the table. Sue is back with us. So for those of you who are new to the district, Sue was how many years in HR and is going to be here for because Ashley has finished. Um, I am Karen Taylor. I am the lead negotiator for EM.
Chad Olson, VP EM.
Bonnie Stafford, member rights.
Cam Wingenbach, Director of Business Services.
Arthur Percent. Sue Winter, interim HR director.
Kristen Damer, assistant superintendent.
Brandon Lennox, Superintendent.
Cassidy Bjorklund School Board.
Dave Marquardt, School Board.
Christine Berg, EM President.
Julie Reno, research chair.
Michelle Dunn, secretary.
All right. Any concerns with the minutes? Or are we ready to sign those?
I think we're ready to sign.
It's been a while, so.
Yes.
I did.
I just signed one.
Oh, you just signed an agenda. Yeah. Here are the minutes. I did have agenda and
They're not there. They're right there.
yeah, it's up.
That's not how you guys.
I know what I'm doing.
Mm-hmm. It's because I accidentally printed the minutes page, but there's no minutes on it yet.
Not dressed.
I printed 2 extras or request.
It's up.
It'll be just right here.
Oh, no. It's almost like it's the first week after break. How's everyone doing? Okay. Mm-hmm. Agreed. Okay, so we district team has three things tonight. Counter to our leave articles, a counter to the Article 17 Appendix I, and then compensation benefits proposal that I will hand out on behalf of the team after we go over the language. So on the leave due to sickness and emergency under section 1, we hear you on the 60-day renewal. We also wanted to address some of the concerns that we have brought up, specific to the use of that leave, but also recognize some of the conversation we had last time about making people have leave available, especially for extended illnesses. So we are making a request that it's not immediate, but it's July 1, 2026, that we continue with the 60-day renewal, but it looks more like how we're accruing sick time. So continue to accrue that 20 general sick days, but also be able to bank that 40 days so that you always have 60 days. But there's a difference in how those two types of leave can be used, with the 40 being specific to those severe illnesses that would fall under maybe federal FMLA or paid family medical leave. So that is a counter to some of the language in discussion about those 60 days. The second change that we're requesting in section 2 under C, which is coordination of the paid family medical leave and ESST and sick leave benefits. And to be transparent, Karen and I have spoken about this specific to process-oriented work. In the state of Minnesota, especially in school districts, what we're seeing more often than not is that we're not supplementing leave. And we've had that discussion about supplementing leave. We also just want to make sure that we have the time to get it up and running to know what we're dealing with before we're managing two separate leaves. So we are requesting to make the change that at the request of the employee, unpaid family medical leave employer may allow the employee to use individual accrued leave and to stay in contact and have conversations about that. In fairness, we have about 10 people who have requested paid family medical leave, and at this point, no one has requested to supplement. Article 39 is just the language we already changed to define a child under the school conference and activities leave. Article 41 is the personal leave, and we did not amend the recommendation of your team in your counter, which was to change the years to 0 to 15, 16 to 25, and 26 plus. So we left that as is. We do feel, though, that that from an equity standpoint, people should have to ask for leave within a period of time and being held to that 5%. So we know we talked about that last time, and you felt that that was something that you felt was okay, even if it wasn't equitable across the group. We did leave our previous language in there. Outside of that, I don't believe there's any additional changes. Questions?
On. It's just like working online. Um, so when we look at letter C under section 2, Article 38, the employee makes the request and the employer may allow the employee to use. And at their discretion, does that refer to the employee, or at their discretion, does that refer to HR or whoever would make that determination?
The language is specific to the employee's discretion because the employer cannot require someone to supplement their leave as the law sits right now. But there are still some policy procedure.
Keith, are you leaning against the lights?
For 10 minutes. 10 minutes.
Technically, the language is specific for the employee. there there is some suggestion that this is pulled out in its entirety and put into employee handbooks because there's some procedure that has to go with that as to who is calculating what that leave, how does that look like, how we get notified as to what the total benefit is, but the calculation and how that's happening is this is so new to everyone still continues to be a question.
Okay. So, y- you and I talked a little bit about how we might need to revisit on a a somewhat regular basis until we kind of get a routine figured out for like what does this look like? How does it make sense to do it? What's the procedure? We talked about Red Rover, whether it would be an option to put in Red Rover. So just for those people who are here, just an understanding that because this is new, it just started January 1st. We're not entirely certain what the best procedure for this will be going forward. So we're just going to have to do some collaborative work on this as we go forward. So we'll look at and talk through that language more specifically. But I think that was probably the only. Anybody else have a question at this time or need more
just-
time to look?
It
Go ahead.
just, a little more information, like under section 1,
Mhm.
I just kind of explained it. Can you like the why? Why do you want it to look like this? If I can get a little more information.
An extended leave. In reality with ESST and our inability to really ask questions unless there's a pattern of abuse, the ability to use that leave, which the intent is for short-term disability, essentially to get you to that long-term disability. The concern presented when we asked to get rid of the 60-day renewal was specific to long-term leave. So that leaves those days available if you have a significant concern. But it does put some parameter on a 60-day renewal when once you hit 60 days and you're renewing, it doesn't happen very often, but we do have some heavy usage sometimes. So it's to address that the 60-day continues, but to put some parameters on that 40 days, which is generally what people are using them for is for extended time.
Do we know how many, do we know how many people, what percentage of people, like how rampant would you call the abuse of the 60-day leave?
The usage of significant amount of sick days, I don't have that data with me. I know we've run through that in the past. But I think as we move on to Article 17 and talking about substituting, there is a lot of usage of leave. I would say our sick leave in the past few years, in comparison to how many people we have on, has gone down slightly. We've talked about that. Yep.
Anybody else? Okay.
Okay, so our counter to Article 17 leaves Section 2 as is. The concern for our team would be putting the majority down to a place where I think there's an understanding that, yep, some people get an hour for an hour and some people get an hour for 45 minutes. The suggestion might be then that we need to track by smaller increments of time so it's more equitable, which is tough because then you do have people who will go backwards. But I think for us that's a valid conversation as opposed to adjusting it so everyone is getting more time than they're subbing potentially. And we've had this language in place for a while. And again, Karen and I talked a little bit. Like I think where this started to be really helpful, it's now gotten really detailed and it becomes increasingly hard to manage. And if there was a way, that we weren't, I think, on session 9 or put some time into really looking at this over the next contract, it might be worth our time to bring a few people together and figure out if we can make it better or simplify or how to track it. And, currently it's human tracked at every building. And We quite frequently have people in January tell us they weren't paid for something in September, and it's because someone didn't give them the time, or someone didn't write down the time, um, or I didn't know about the time. And so there's some process. I think we don't love to talk about process, but process is a part of making sure everyone gets what they need, um, and so we have to continue to talk about that. I think, and I say that from the interim and myself, who have helped teams to manage some of this, and then tried to help when it hasn't been done correctly. So that's just kind of explaining the first page on either some of those changes weren't added. I think for our team, 7, the changes to 4 and 7 are not new. And some of these changes occurred through the process without having some of that older language in front of us. I think 10, combining of classrooms. One of the changes was the highlighted with as much advance notification as possible. 11, significant changes, with the exception of C and D, which I think have previously been presented. But one of the items we brought back, of course, is one of the conversations we've had when someone is assigned to a longer term assignment, meaning maybe my job is media, or maybe my job is coaching, and I get assigned for 3 or more days. What does that look like? And we look to put some language in to try to address some of that, because what happens now is the individual, and sometimes Karen or whoever is representing or supporting, will call and say, "Hey, I've been in this classroom for 5 days. What are we going to do about it?" And sometimes, as in last year when we lost someone, then you had a couple of people splitting the time. So how do we better address that? Because it is easier said than done to say, "Yeah, we're going to try to relieve you some of that work." Sometimes that works in some cases, and it's recognized it doesn't always work. There's only so much you can take off people's plates. So I don't know that there's significant changes there, but all the changes that we've kind of discussed back and forth, with the exception of page 1, are highlighted. And again, I don't know that we need an MOU, or just need to say, hey, our teams need to talk a little how we can look at that language over a period of time.
There was a group that got together already to kind of look at this, and maybe that committee just carries forward.
Yeah, we'd probably have to put some, I think we need some secondary on that. I think it was mostly elementary.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
and then last thing is a Michelle or Karen, a separate compensation proposal. So I'll let everyone get it in front of them. So I would say from the district team is still in a place where we have been a percent. But the other thing I will mention is that in talks with the food service group and negotiating their contract, we did agree to a 6.39%, and that will go to the board on Monday. And again, as I will note, we are approved to 6%. So we will talk to the board with that on Monday. But in response to that, we present to you a similar percentage at 6.4, 6.44, and 6.40%. And so 2 options. And again, our team will say we are more than willing to have a conversation and continue to work through what that looks like at those percentages. But to present 2 options, one has family and married health insurance, an increase of $50 a month for both year 1 and year 2. Wage increase of 1.3%, and off schedule for that last step of 400 in both year 1 and year 2, and that's 6.44%. Another discussion we had is that we're in January, and understanding that sometimes insurance in particular can be complex in trying to figure out back adjustment, but we present a year 1 where there's no increase to health insurance, a year 2 where you have the $50 health insurance increase. and then wages at 1.4%, and the off schedule of 900 the first year. Year two, 1.4%, and off schedule of 400 on the last step, and that total package increases a 6.4%. And if you look at, there are some things, we are mandated to provide from a standpoint. But one of the concerns that was brought was specifically on those last steps, that with the increase to health insurance and some of the other increases, that people were going backwards, and both of these would put the group in a place where that doesn't happen.
So just for clarification, the off schedule means it would be a one, like,
No,
can you clarify what you mean by off schedule?
it's off schedule, meaning it's not built into the salary schedule, but it's still built into your salary. So generally, when you have an off schedule, it just doesn't build into the salary schedule, so that we don't continue to have those significant jump 11, 12, 12, 13. But that's what it's meant by off schedule. So it's not a one time. Generally, it's put in your salary. If you choose 10 or 12 months, then it's spread across.
Questions, anybody at this time? Okay. Then we'll take a look at that. And the only item that we have on tonight is the Appendix C and D, which is the extracurricular. And I think we are ready to TA that. So I have a clean copy.
As do I. Karen's handwriting is much nicer than mine is tonight.
Thank you.
All right. There you go, Michelle.
Thanks.
For caucus. You don't have anything to go back with, so I bet it's going to kind of depend on us. What are you thinking, Julie? Should we say 30 minutes? Okay. Okay. Let's say 30 minutes. So
You'll check
should
in
we just-
30 minutes?
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So around 6 o'clock, if that makes sense. Okay. For those of you who are here, we'll take, this is our no, 30. Clean those ears out. All right. Do you have a cold? Do you have a cold? You know that if you plug your nose. Yeah.
You got
it- okay. We'll take questions. So if it's okay. Okay, thanks. Here we go. We have more questions than proposals. So, but we knew that this was going to take some. So, I'm going to start at the beginning of your packet. So if you kind of follow along. So first in section 1, our one of our questions is so the 20-day leave, it's under the category of sick leave. In the past, all types of leave have come out of our one leave bank. So some areas of concern or clarification, we were wondering about specifically about bereavement leave. So bereavement leave was something that came out of 60 days. Now it would be coming out of 20. Personal leave also came out of the leave bank. Civic leave, I believe, came out of that same bank. And then another question that we had was this piece of language that you put in here refers to banked for use for qualified reason under federal FMLA or Minnesota PFML. And we have in our current contract language a fairly limited use of leave from our bank for bonding, but bonding is approved as leave under Minnesota PFML. So would the intention include, or would then people be able to use or top off, or however, whatever language we're going to use for that, because that's an approved PFML leave, would they automatically be eligible for the additional leave bank?
So just as okay, one, the intent is not to change the bank, right? So if we're looking at what qualified reasons qualified under your general 60 days, the intention was not to change that. That would be number one. Two, we'd probably have to figure out or identify maybe some more specifics on that, because as of right now, that leave wouldn't qualify for sick leave. So that would require more discussion. I think to your point, right? Generally, when you're out for family medical leave, specific to that, we have language set aside for if you're a partner and using bonding language, or if you're, what that looks like, because you can only take within the days you've been disabled. So likely more specifics would be needed. So we would continue maybe to have some questions back and forth on how to make that more clear if the language moved forward.
Okay.
Yep.
I think that was the like some confusion.
Mhm.
In the past, when we have talked about a leave bank, there has been concern about tax liability, which I think typically stemmed from that was a concern that came from, I don't remember if it was attorneys or accountants.
Correct, but that's banking for other people and pulling leave out of your bank, not for your own bank.
Okay.
So right now, it really is the same. It's just providing some parameters on those additional days.
Okay.
So that
Okay.
doesn't apply here.
Okay. Then I guess the overall question, and if you need to have some conversation before you answer this, I guess I understand that. But based on the fact that our member rights folks have not been invited into a lot of disciplinary meetings about this concern. So the feeling is like this isn't really a big problem. So if that's not the big problem, then what is the problem that this solves?
I think that that's relative. I think it would be easier to provide data because there's a usage that may appear to be general, and then there's usage that may be inappropriate. I think those two are very different things, but all contribute to concerns with leave. So I would say our team would need to say, okay, let's look at that data so that we can present that in a way that makes sense. And we have done that in the past. We haven't done it for a while. In talking about like looking at average leave per individual and then looking at other industry, for example, what does that look like? And the other thing is, I think to your point, how many people does it affect? And so then if it doesn't affect a significant amount negatively, then is it a concern to put parameters when it doesn't affect people negatively? That's probably a valid conversation.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I mean, I think those are questions that we have.
Mhm.
And again, like I completely understand if you need to have conversation and figure out how to answer that. Then another question that we have, or another concern that we have is for item C on that same page, on that front page. Uh, the language that's on there says, at the request of an employee, unpaid family medical leave. And we absolutely agree. It should be the responsibility of the employee. If you want if you want the top off option, like that should be up to you, because we were talking about situations where someone may not, like if someone's new to the district and they're having a child, maybe they want to save that leave for illness days or that sort of thing. What we're concerned about is the word may, and what would your concern be with changing to, at the request of an employee on paid medical leave, the employer shall allow the employee to use individual accrued leave?
Because in the moment, we're not prepared to do that with a new process. So I think the concern continues to be it's up to the employer to allow that or to write that in. And so initially we had the conversation, and kind of under hindsight, we need more time to see what that looks like, what the volume is, how we're going to track it, how we're going to create procedures. There may be some question that it should be in a contract at all, like I said, versus an employee handbook. So that would be our concern for saying shall instead of may, or identifying how to address it in the future versus immediate.
Okay, so it's not a resistance on the part of the district to um, top off or to include payment if the employee requests it, and if there's leave available that's appropriate for the leave. Like there's not resistance or any hesitation on the part of the district.
There is resistance from those who have to figure out how to track it because we just don't know enough, which is why there's some grace being asked. So I think from a future perspective, there's not necessarily resistance, but there is in trying to figure out that the team is concerned about how to do it. There's also some payroll implications that actually I just found out about this week that we have to ask more questions. So that's why we're saying that we need some grace on that. That potentially, yes, in the future, I do think that there is a direction that will go. It's not prepared to
Okay.
go right now. Mhm.
Okay.
And I think back to kind of the question about the bonding leave as it sits, because it started January 1st as opposed to July 1st, it puts us in kind of this odd bubble of where normally a lot of these leaves are going to run concurrently, which changes how you're tracking it. Which is why a little bit of time to figure out how to do that as we work through this new process would be helpful.
Okay. Does anybody else have questions on those two portions? Okay. We had some concern about, so at one point in time, we talked about the compensatory leave rolling into personal leave. And we have limits about how much can be carried over, but let's say that I end the year with 6 days. My accrual limit is 7, but I earn through subbing 2 compensatory days. After the year has started, would I be allowed to then have 8 days?
No, I would say you have to use your time. right? So if you know you can accrue 7, but you've worked to get 2, then that the time would have to be taken or it'd be lost.
But I would in that current year be able to take 8 days. Like
Yeah, we'd have to. I look at Sue. She's like, "Stop looking at me."
she's like, stop talking about this. It's making me tired.
Everyone, make sure to say hello to Sue on your way out. Um, yes. And again, some of that is, um, I, I wish it wasn't, but the systems are strange in how you have to put in time. And I think we talked about this with something else, maybe not at the table, but things have to be entered manually. It is a tedious process. So, generally, yes, if you're earning your time and you're taking it, you should. You're not going to be able to carry that over, but you should be able to use the time they're using. But it doesn't. I mean, I would say it's one of those things that doesn't happen very often.
Right. Yep.
And it's always easier to manage a few than the mass in some of those situations.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Then if we can look at Article 17. So we agree, like it might be wise to pull together a group. One of the items that we had a question about is number 5. So under Appendix I, item number 5, letter C says compensatory leave may be carried over to the following year, but is subject to personal leave accrual limit in Article 38. Previously, if compensatory leave days weren't used by a certain time, they'd be paid out at the end of the year. Will that continue?
Um,
And if you need to think about, like,
Yeah.
I understand. if
Yeah,
you
no, yeah, I
have an
think we'd have
immediate
to,
answer.
yeah, I think we'd have to think about that because we'd be in the same place where you'd have to. So, how do we make that more clear than to say if you haven't used it, do we want to make it a choice? Do we not want to make it a choice? That becomes the issue because it goes back to your previous question of, if I had 8 days, well, then one of them is going to be paid out. So then, to your point, I think we have to be specific about if you're over your accrual limit, then the one would be paid out.
Okay.
That might make sense.
And it would be paid out as compensatory leave, so it's the sub rate per hour. Okay. Number 7 on the same page, where it says compensatory time may not be taken until it's been earned. Leave will be entered as personal leave time in the substitute management system by the 10th of the month following the identification of compensatory personal leave. The feeling about that, the concern about that is that, say someone earns, Chad Olson earns his last hours for compensatory time on the 2nd of January, February, whatever it is. If it's a longer month, if it's a full month, it could be 40 days later before he can collect on that. And that also means it's 40 days before he can put in the request for that personal leave because we want to get away from putting it in and then ending up being deduct. Is there any possibility that that could be tied to payroll dates and that it could happen twice per month instead of once per month so that people don't have to wait as long? And again, that's a question that if
Yep.
you've got to go back to people and get it answered, I completely understand that, but that's the concern of people is that, especially, like sometimes people have weddings in October, and they might, if they don't get the request in for leave, the 5% gets hit and it's a problem. So,
Yep.
and then I think, Sarah, did you have a question? Okay.
This is going to
10 with the language of the combining of the classrooms, and then B under that, where it says above named positions and any other teachers who do not normally have an assigned or scheduled prep time will be eligible for additional payment. If they're asked and agreeing to supervise classes per the combining of classroom language. I just wanted to make sure that that's covering those people that have been reassigned for just the one day. Our LRS, our coaches, our psych social workers, those people. Does that cover them then getting that pay that they are now not receiving in the current contract?
For combining of classrooms?
Well, it says if they're asked to sub, is that what it means if they're asked to sub and reassign for one day? Will they get the payment schedule as it is under number 10?
I think what she's asking, and I think we had, so under letter A,
Mhm.
we named specifically counselors, social work, school psychologists.
Mhm.
And earlier we talked about, like this could also end up applying to LRS. It could apply to, like, there are a variety of people that, as I recall, when we talked about it, it was, well, but we can't name everybody because it's just too many. And that's why it's will be assumed to have a prep time equal to 60 minutes. I think what Sarah's asking is if you're reassigned for the day and you are one of these people whose prep time is flexible as an LRS because there are different grade levels coming in on a day-to-day basis and the prep time is flexible in order to be flexible for the classroom teachers who have students coming in, is the understanding that if you everyone who's on the teacher's contract has some kind of prep time allowance in their day. I think Sarah's question is if anyone who's on the teacher's contract should have prep time, if they're reassigned, will they be compensated for that 1 hour rather than it being specific to counselors, social workers, and school psychologists?
Um, well, I don't know that we've talked about it at the table. Karen and I have talked about it in particular. Is that there are positions that can be reassigned and can be that's why we tried to address the longer term assignments. So, were you talking about B initially or just 10 in general? Because some of that language is if you were assigned to a classroom for the day in your role, and that classroom had a prep time,
Correct.
you're assigned and you're still getting a prep time even though you're doing your job differently. So how are we addressing if it happens too frequently or too often that you may not get the prep time? There may be something else going on. That's a different question.
I think the concern really, and what I'm hearing from people, and I feel this myself personally as well, Chad signs up to sub over his prep, he gets compensated for that. Someone gets assigned to double class, they get compensated for that. But we have this pocket of people that get reassigned and they have no compensation and their work is still there. And it's waiting for them, all the emails to answer and everything. And so, why we do get a prep in that day as that teacher's prep, we're prepping for that class we're subbing for because that's all new information to us. And we still have all that extra work to do when we get back to our jobs. And so that's what we're asking. And so there's a pocket, and it's not that large of a pocket, but we're just asking that they get some compensation as well for filling in the gap for subbing. People ask often if there was a sub there, the district would be paying for that sub. Where did that money go? And why can't that money be used to compensate people who are filling in for those people?
So I, I would say we would rather have a sub. It's far more expensive to put our
So
teachers.
we
Right,
would too,
for
right?
sure,
Yeah.
right? Like it's very expensive and it's not helpful to have to miss prep times. And we've talked about that multiple times. So I believe we've talked about that before. It's noted. I don't have an answer on the response
Yeah.
for the team
And we
right
had
now.
that countered in our last counter and it's
Mhm.
gone. So we're still working towards that.
Okay. For compensation, did Christy? Yep. Okay. Beautiful.
Um, First, I just have a couple of questions. So when you said that no one would go backwards, I'm wondering, um, what expenses you are taking into account.
The truth is, from a district perspective, you can't take them all into account, right? What you've provided to us, we, in one of the counters or when we had a conversation about you put all the new costs, including the levy cost, an employer can look at all of those with potential costs. We looked at different scenarios, both for health insurance and including both paid family medical, TRA in particular, when we looked at that.
Okay. Um, so, because I just did some quick math. So in the first proposal, if I just look at the bottom right corner, 1.3% is about $1,600. And then 1.3 plus the 400 is about $1,600. And then the health insurance increase would be another $600 a year, which is $2,200. I didn't even take the TRA increase into account, but if I swap it out, it's still about the same. Is that the new medical leave act would be a little over 400. A family health insurance premium would go up $1,690, and the TRA increase is 231, which is $2,373.
I would say it's hard to look at what we were looking at versus what you're looking at, and about how you were running those numbers might be helpful because Cam could show you how we ran them.
Okay, I would be interested in that.
We just want to make sure we're all on the same page.
Yeah,
Yeah,
right.
because we're not presenting something not telling the truth. So that would tell me that somewhere our numbers are wrong, right?
Okay.
And you're asking the questions, which is okay. I'm just telling you that we're not. We know we presented it with. It might not be significant, but addressing the concern that you don't want to be in the negative in that bottom right hand corner. Yep.
Right. Or anywhere. I
For
just
sure, but that's mainly when we've presented where the main issue has been was the bottom
Yeah.
right hand corner.
Right.
Yep.
That's true.
And really, I should say it's not always the bottom right hand. It's the bottom rows where there's no step.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to have another question here on the sheet that Cam presented, this one last time. So I don't know if you have it handy, but that's okay. I'll get there in a second. But so in the 2024-2025 school year, the district collected $633,000 for targeted services. So in addition to summer school, this money was used to pay approximately 45 teachers for after-school remedial work with students. In the current school year, the school district will collect $740,000, but plans on paying teachers for summer school because now that remediation is done during the school day. And so the district has included the work during the contract hours now as at the start of the school day. And the district can do this because we still meet the number of minutes mandated by the state. So there's nothing shady going on. It's not illegal. But the decision to do that has some ramifications. The teachers who were doing this work, it's now a loss of wages for them. And I do have a question about the $500,000 or so that now will not be paid to teachers. In the sheet that Cam had, when it said for this school year, there would be a sufficiency or surplus of $835,480. Was that taking this money into account, or will this money be in addition to that?
I'll have to review that document that you're looking at, but I will say that it's factored into our bottom line, and we're using that when we're looking at our costing numbers. So
Right. So were you looking at it when you gave us this sheet? Do you know what I mean? Or is
yeah,
that okay?
yep, it's all factored in there.
Okay. Okay. Okay, so just to kind of like, I just want to make sure I'm getting the numbers right here. We've got, if we pay for summer school, it's still over $500,000 that will be saved by not paying those teachers. And then a large portion, I know, of the 2.75 increase from the state funding formula will be used to make up some deficits because special education is underfunded. Right? So far, so good. Yep. And then the district, again, the same document that Cam presented in the 26-27 school year. Next school year, you plan on putting $6.6 million essentially in the bank. Like we're going to take levy money. I'm reading it from your sheet. Is that right? Sure. Yep. Yep.
Okay, you're referring to 25, 26, the surplus there?
I think,
Or,
isn't it the 26-27 school year that it's $6.6 million of a surplus?
okay. Yep, that's when we'll receive the revenue. So, which is why we'll see that surplus in 26, 27.
So that's all of the levy money plus.
Well, there's other factors into it. I mean, the goal is to build up that unassigned fund balance, and our current unassigned fund balance at 2%. So to get to that 15%, the only way to do that is to have a surplus in our budget.
Okay. Sure. Thank you. So when we talk about all of these things, there just isn't very many places or anywhere that I see that it seems like taking care of our teachers seems to be a priority. Much less it just, yeah. So you're asking teachers to do work with less time. And I would invite every single one of you at the table, and this is a sincere offer. Next semester, block one, I have 37 students, and there isn't room in my classroom that I'm in right now. I'll be in a different classroom. And I would love for you to come and see what that looks like and what that feels like. And it's a sincere offer. Block one, any day of the week. Please come in. As decision makers, I would encourage you to get into the classrooms to see the people that you're affecting. It's one thing to look at cutting budgets on paper, but it's quite another to see and talk to teachers and students and see how their lives are affected on the day to day. I also want to point out that teachers are the largest group invested in health insurance in our district. And if health insurance gets too expensive, teachers look elsewhere. And so I don't want that to happen for the good of all of us. Teachers they provide stability for our health insurance. And so I think that also needs to be a priority for us. Our proposal that we have is a very serious, thought out plan where no teacher goes backward in pay. This proposal recognizes that the district may not be financially stable this year and accounts for that by conceding that some money will not stay on the salary schedule for this first year, but will stay on the salary schedule for the second year. Other districts our size around the state have increased salaries in addition to increased health insurance benefits, increased personal time, increases to 403B match to 5%. This proposal is very commensurate with those other proposals. So our proposal in year one, 1.75% added to all cells of the salary schedule, and it stays. $1,200 added to step 14, one-time money. $50 per month per member for family health insurance, $25 per month per single health insurance policy. In year 2, 1.75% increase added to all cells that stay, $1,500 to the bottom row, both steps 13 and 14, anyone on the bottom, and that also stays. $75 a month for family health insurance and $50 per month for single. And then our hope would be that we can count on you to remember the concessions that we feel like we're making now. District is in lean times. 2 years from now, when we're back at the table bargaining for the next contract and the district is financially stable.
Julie, is it true that based on this, with additional expenses, which, as Kristen pointed out, we may not be costing the same things, but member of your team did spreadsheet after spreadsheet after spreadsheet to make sure that that is true.
Yes, shout out to Abby Carlson, who did a lot of work.
All right. 7 minutes. Yeah, we won't be going back for 7 minutes, probably. So, I would say if we're adjourning, probably 6:53.
Can I ask one clarifying question?
Cam, I just want to make sure that I wrote this down correctly because sometimes my writing gets sloppy. I want to make sure I'm correct. When you said that in 2026, 2027, there will be $6.6 million surplus that is added to the general fund unassigned fund balance for the district, which is every penny of the referendum money plus. Did I write that down correctly?
I will say that was a broad budgeting model that I was working on, but there's a lot of factors that are going to be factored into there. But yes, the idea to get back to that fund balance requires for 12 to 15% unassigned fund balance. That requires about 14.5 million in our unassigned fund balance, which is about 2 months of expenditures for the district.
So I did write that down correctly.
Yes.
Thank you. That's all I wanted to know.
6:54. Thanks, Chad.
Sometimes I get.
It's okay.
Thanks, Cam.